Naruto, the ninja who picks up ultimate powers. Like, share and subscribe. Episode 41. Orochimaru was interested in himself, and Natsuki didn't know about it. At this moment, he and the three of Hinata had already arrived at the center tower. Glancing at the center tower, Natsuki turned his head and said to Hinata, who was holding the Heaven and Earth scroll, "Hinata, open both scrolls at the same time. Even if you have completed this exam, then the examiners should arrange to leave the forest of death. Don't worry too much." Hearing Natsuki's words, Hinata nodded and said, "Well, I see." As he spoke, Hinata had already disassembled the two scrolls and opened the two scrolls directly. Boom. As soon as the scroll was opened, a cloud of white smoke dispersed. "Oh? Did you pass the exam so quickly?" The figure of Sunset Red appeared in front of Hinata, looking at the three of them with a surprised expression. What a surprise. Seeing the appearance of Sunset Red, Natsuki's slight surprise. He remembered that the ninja greeted in the original book was Irika. The 8th class has become Sunset Red, and there are slight changes. At this time, after a little exchange with Hinata, Sunset Red looked at Natsuki. "Friend, you should have collected 2 scrolls, right?" Hearing Sunset Hong's question, Natsuki nodded and said, "Well, collected it." For this point, Jiraiya did not have any doubts, and spoke. "In that case, you have also passed the second exam. Come and leave the forest of death together." Hearing this, Xiaomu was stunned for a moment and came to Sunset Hong. "Trouble Teacher Hong." With a smile, Jiraiya didn't care, directly opened a scroll, placed it on the ground, and his hands instantly froze. Ninfa, reverse psychic art. Boom. A large cloud of white smoke dispersed, and the figures of Xiaomu and the others had disappeared from the position of the central tower, the entrance to the forest of death. Boom. In the white smoke, Sunset Red appeared here with the 4 of Xiaomu. With a flickering of his eyes, he came here, causing a fine light to burst out of Natsuki's eyes. Psychic arts. It's a pretty good ninjutsu. It's just a pity that Xiaomu doesn't know psychic arts, and there are no psychic beasts to summon him, but in the future, it may not be. If you can brush the 9 tails, using the 9 tails as a psychic beast is also a good choice. 9 tails, it is estimated that it will not be so easy to fall. Not long after, Yuri Hong informed Naka Shinobu at the entrance that the 8th class and Natsuki had passed the exam, and registered it. Came to the 4 people again, with a smile on Sunset Red's face, and spoke. 5 days later, you will come here again before the end of the exam, and then I will enter the central tower with you, and the friends will be the same, understand? Hearing Sunset Hong's words, Natsuki nodded. "I see." Hinata 3 also nodded. "Understood." Nodding in satisfaction, Sunset Hong spoke. "Then, Hinata, you disband first. Friend, you come with me first." Stunned for a moment, although Xiaomu was puzzled, he still didn't ask more, and nodded directly. "Yes. Teacher Hong." Swish. Sunset Red's figure flashed and had already left. Glancing in the direction Sunset Red left, Natsuki turned his head to face Hinata. "Hinata, we'll see you at the old place at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning." Hinata nodded obediently. "I know, Natsuki-kun, be careful." With a smile, Xiaomu raised his hand and made a seal. His figure flashed, and he had left the place and quickly chased towards Sunset Hong. Yikes. The 2 figures moved quickly above the eaves, and Natsuki looked at the Sunset Red beside him, guessing in his heart what the task was this time. Logically speaking, during the Zonin exam, there should be nothing wrong with him, but looking at Sunset Red's appearance, it is obvious that there is a task arranged for him. "Teacher Hong, are there any special tasks?" While following the Sunset Red, Natsuki asked. Nodding, Sunset Red spoke. In the second exam, there were some small changes, and now there are a slight shortage of manpower, so I will summon your friends at this time. This is the order of Lord Hokage." Hearing this, Natsuki nodded and didn't ask more. Soon, with the speed of Natsuki and Sunset Red, they soon came to the side of the Hokage building. Yikes. Natsuki followed the Sunset Red and landed on the roof of the Hokage building. There are already quite a few kami shinobi here, even Kakashi is here, and there is an elite kami shinobu with thick eyebrows and big eyes in a green training suit. Metkei. The teachers of Xiaqiang's class are all here. The arrival of Sunset Red and Natsuki attracted the attention of the upper ninja present. Kakashi saw Natsuki and spoke. "Friend Kun, you are in a group with me." Hearing this, Natsuki nodded. "Yes. Kakashi Shinobu." As he spoke, Natsuki stood behind Kakashi without saying a word. Although no one explained to him what the situation was, Natsuki already had some guesses in his heart. It should be the big snake pill thing. He also remembered that there were a few sentences mentioned in the original book. After the whereabouts of the big snake pill were exposed, Mitarashi Red Bean went to find the big snake pill first, but he also let the dark part notify the 3 generations of Hokage. Although it is not explained specifically, it seems that it is not paid much attention, but the current situation does not seem to be a general attention. But this is also normal. Today's Konoha is strong and dry, and the shadow-level powerhouse who can get his hands on it is only an elderly 3rd-generation Hokage. For a strong enemy like the Great Snake Pill, it is impossible not to pay attention to it. Now this kind of formation is the normal situation. Almost all of them here are Shang-Tuendo, and the worst ones are also particularly Shang-tolerant. Natsuki's small subjugation is quite eye-catching. It's just that the others didn't care too much, just glanced at Natsuki, and didn't care. Standing quietly behind Kakashi, Natsuki did not speak, let alone show the limelight, quietly waiting for the arrival of the 3 generations of Hokage. Swish. After waiting for a while, a 3-generation Hokage dressed as a battle instantly appeared in front of everyone. Long wait. Looking at all the upper shinobi present, the 3rd generation of Hokage looked serious and spoke. The content of the mission, all the leaders of the team understand it, right? So without further ado, act now. Cell phone. In the midst of a storm, all the upper shinobi disappeared on the roof of the Hokage building. Natsuki's figure followed Kakashi closely, and his heart was like an expression, quite calm. Even if he encounters the big snake pill, Natsuki will not worry too much about this problem. With his combat power, plus Kakashi, even if it is a frontal hard steel big snake pill, Natsuki has no problem with confidence. After all, Kakashi is not a pig teammate. Episode 42, Training Ground number 44. Following Kakashi, Natsuki returned here once again. Falling onto a tree, looking at the traces of battle left around him, Natsuki spoke. There's a terrible battle going on here. Hearing this, Kakashi nodded and said, such traces are normal. After all, the person who shot is one of the legendary Konoha 3 shinobi. Speaking of this, Kakashi turned his head to look at Natsuki. Speaking of friends Kuin, you should have known about Konoha Sannin, right? Natsuki nodded and said, just a little bit of knowledge, not much information. So Kakashi-senpai, the goal of this mission, is one of the 3 shinobi of Konoha? Kakashi shook his head and spoke. Nope. The task of the 2 of us is to ensure that the second exam goes smoothly, and in addition, the other tasks will be left to the other squads and Naruto-sama. Natsuki nodded in understanding. I see, this is normal. After all, the joint Chunin exam is about Konoha's face, and it's understandable to do so. It's just that Natsuki is very clear that this joint Zonin exam is a big pit. Although this is the case, Natsuki will not remind anything. First, it is difficult to explain, and second, he also needs this big pit to become stronger and make himself reach the shadow level. So, as he spoke, Kakashi stood up. I've seen it here, let's change places. Natsuki did not speak, but also stood up. Yikes. The 2 figures instantly left their original positions and headed in the deeper direction of the Death Forest. Natsuki and Kakashi moved forward in the direction of the horns. This is when the duo is teaming up, and it is very suitable to be able to strengthen the orientation of teammates and themselves. Boom hiss. Just as Natsuki and Kakashi continued to search, a huge cloud of white smoke erupted in front of Kakashi, and a huge snake opened its mouth and tore directly towards Kakashi. Choke. The moment Natsuki noticed it, the Naotai knife in his hand was directly unsheathed. One knife flow, thunder, pull out the knife and slash. Zheng. Poof. The Naotai knife carried a crashing thunder chakra, like a bolt of lightning, and as soon as the light of the knife passed, a huge snake head flew into the air. Boom. At the same time that the snake's head fell, Natsuki stood beside Kakashi with Naotai knife in hand. Friend Kuin, thank you. Kakashi opened his mouth and thanked Natsuki, although the attack of this big snake could not do anything to him. But it was good that Natsuki made a move. Looking ahead quietly, Natsuki spoke. You're welcome, Kakashi-senpai. Snap. The sound of applause sounded, and above the big tree lit up with white smoke, the figure of the big snake pill appeared there. A pair of gloomy snake eyes looked at Xiaomu, and the big snake pill smiled. Sadly, it is worthy of being a genius who is even better than Sasuke-kun. Natsuki-kun is really powerful. Click. Raising the Naotai knife in his hand, Natsuki looked at the big snake pill, and the chakra on his body flowed, ready to strike at any time. I feel more or less unlucky. The great snake pill hadn't even left this forest of death, and it seems that his target is still himself, and Natsuki couldn't help but shiver. Physically and psychologically, I can't accept this fact. Kakashi's face was serious, and he had already pulled up his forehead, revealing a 3-hook jade chakra eye, and looked at the big snake pill on the opposite side like this. With a solemn gaze, Kakashi spoke. I really didn't expect that you would still be here. Hearing Kakashi's words, Orochimaru's gaze shifted to Kakashi's body. Kakashi, long time no see. Taking a few steps forward, Kakashi blocked Natsuki behind him, looked at Orochimaru and spoke. What is the purpose of your return? Hearing Kakashi's words, Orochimaru's face was still that sinister smile. The purpose now? Of course, I came to meet my friend Kuin, who is more genius than Sasuke-kun. While speaking, the big snake pill's gaze fell on Xiaomu's body, and that sick gaze made Xiaomu's face cold, and the killing intent on his body bloomed, making the atmosphere instantly suppressed to the extreme. The legendary 3 shinobi? With cold eyes, Natsuki looked at Orochimaru. Do you want to try it? Is the knife in my hand sharp? Duh. As he spoke, Natsuki raised the Naotai knife in his hand and pointed it directly at the big snake pill. Seeing the Naotai knife in Natsuki's hand, the big snake pill was slightly surprised, and spoke. Huh? Grass pheasant sword. Friend Jun's luck was good, and he actually got a grass pheasant sword. Hearing the words of the big snake pill, Natsuki glanced at the Naotai knife in his hand with some surprise. It's really a grass pheasant sword. Swish. Zheng. At this moment, a cold light came. Natsuki's gaze froze, and while dodging sideways, he raised the grass pheasant sword in his hand. Boom. The flames on the blade shot out, and Natsuki felt a huge force transmitted to his hand. Sting. Thunder and lightning burst out, and Natsuki's figure instantly left the place. People in the air, free left hand raised, directly sealed to finish. Fire escape, how fireball technique. Bang! A huge fireball with a diameter of 5 or 6 meters exploded directly towards the position of the big snake pill. Strong enough, Seeing this huge fireball that attacked, Orochimaru's face showed an unexpected color. Swish! The sound of breaking wind sounded, and the big snake pill's figure moved, and he left the place directly. At this time, moisture, a terrifying thunder flashed, and Kakashi's figure killed behind Orochimaru. Rage! Sensing the attack behind him, Orochimaru turned around sharply and grabbed Kakashi's right hand with Rachel. It's useless. Kakashi. When the words fell, Orochimaru was about to throw Kakashi's out. Snap! Natsuki's figure fell onto a tree, and he turned his head sharply to look at Orochimaru and Kakashi, and his body was thunderous. Lay instantaneous technique. Sting! A flash of thunder flashed, and Natsuki's figure appeared in front of the big snake pill as if it was teleporting. Zheng! Poof! The grass pheasant sword in Xiaomu's hand carried a terrifying thunder light and directly cut off one of the arms of the big snake pill. The figure swirled in the air, and a backhouse kick under the cover of Lei Dun chakra flung on the face of the big snake pill, and Natsuki burst out. Konoha rigid whirlwind. Boom! Bang! As if it was a football, Orochimaru's body was directly kicked out by this kick and hit a big tree. Kakashi-senpai. Natsuki's face had a serious color. Strike together. Yikes! Without Natsuki's reminder, Kakashi's figure had already killed the big snake pill in an instant, and Ratchet, who had not yet dissipated in his hand, bombarded the past. On the other side, Natsuki, who formed an angle attack with Kakashi, was also killed, and his left hand was raised. Daitama Spiral Pill. Episode 43. Bang! A huge cloud of dust rose, and the trunk of this tree broke in response. Dust obscures the view, making it difficult to see what is going on inside. Yikes! The figures of Natsuki and Kakashi withdrew from the smoke at the same time, looking into the dust. Call. After a while, the dust dispersed, leaving only a snake skin in that place, and the body of the big snake pill no longer knew where it went. Kakashi's face was solemn, and his eyes kept looking around. Gone? Raising his hand and making a mark, Natsuki's eyes closed. Kagura Shinkai. The huge perception emanated, and after carefully examining it, Natsuki opened his eyes again and spoke. The enemy has left, Kakashi-senpai. Hearing Natsuki's words, Kakashi let out a long breath and spoke. It's dangerous. It is worthy of being a legendary figure, and now we are still quite difficult to deal with him even if we join forces. Hearing this, Natsuki nodded in approval. It's really hard. Don't look at the big snake pill fight just now. But to be honest, the big snake pill has hardly become very serious. Otherwise, even if the two of them can win, it will not be so easy. Still, thanks to the 3 generations of Hokage, Orochimaru does not move the real thing, most likely because of the Konoha collapse plan. He is not very convenient to expose too many traces. And now all the targets are on the 3rd generation of Hokage. Swish! Xiaomu's figure came to the front of the snake's skin, and his heart was somewhat speechless. Not even a single card was dropped. This wave, there are some losses. As Natsuki complained, Kakashi on the side stood up and spoke. Friend Kuin, after continuing to patrol again, your mission will be over, although it is not clear what his conspiracy is. But the big snake pill should not come back, you can go back to rest first. Standing up, Natsuki nodded and said, I know. 9 o'clock in the evening, Natsuki is back home. The encounter with Orochimaru and the battle took place at 10 o'clock in the evening, and after searching for hours, Natsuki's mission was over. After eating his mother's hot dinner and taking a bath, Natsuki returned to his bedroom. I didn't expect to make Orochimaru interested in me. Sitting on his own bed, Natsuki's expression was somewhat helpless. But fortunately, he thinks that I don't have the blood succession limit, so I am not very interested. Otherwise I wouldn't have retreated so easily tonight, a civilian genius ninja. It seems that there are still some benefits in the early stage of the blood succession limit. While complaining like this, Natsuki glanced at the cards in the system's inventory. It's basically all purple cards. There are very few cyan cards, and even fewer white cards. System, fuse all my cards, Natsuki said in his heart, with an expectant look in his eyes. Fusion begins. Airplanes. An extremely warm power emerged from Natsuki's body, improving his attributes in all directions. Chakra rose 2 or 3 floors. The physical fitness has become stronger by 1 or 2 layers, and a vitality pervades the whole body, which is the power of Yang. The spiritual power became more tenacious in a cool feeling, which is the power of Yin. The 3-dimensional attributes of ninjas all increased to varying degrees, and Natsuki could feel that he had become more powerful. And among these cards, there are quite a few ninjutsu cards. Although he didn't write the wheel I, the ninjutsu cards picked up by the system were enough to make Natsuki a ninjutsu master alongside Konoha's technician Kakashi, and ninjutsu no longer needed to be taught. After a while, after fully adjusting to his rising power, Natsuki's face showed a color of expectation. In the Konoha collapse plan, I will definitely be able to successfully break through the shadow level, and when the time comes, facing the big snake pill, it will definitely not be as passive as it is now, and I even have to hang the big snake pill up and hammer. The most troublesome thing about the great snake pill is his immortal body, which is difficult to kill completely. Really, to talk about combat effectiveness, very good and quite powerful. However, Natsuki believes that he is even stronger. Thinking about things, Natsuki's eyes slowly closed and fell asleep. The next day, 9 o'clock in the morning, Natsuki, wearing casual clothes, came to the number 3 training ground. Since graduation, the two have agreed that if there is nothing to do in the future, they will come here for dating and training. This is the old place in Natsuki's mouth. Just arrived here, Natsuki saw from a distance that he was already standing under the tree, holding a scroll in his hand, and was quietly watching. Natsuki quietly came to Hinata's side, reached out and directly hugged Hinata's waist and hugged him. Good morning. Hinata, who was suddenly raised high, heard Natsuki's voice, and a rosy and shy expression appeared on his face. Natsuki-kun. Good morning. Throwing away, Hinata's body turned in the air, opened his hands, and fell into Natsuki's arms. Holding Hinata, a breeze blew through, ruffling Hinata's already long hair. Natsuki's chin rested on Hinata's little head and pressed gently. Hinata is so cute. Hearing Natsuki's words, Hinata's little face gently rubbed Natsuki's heart, and the two hugged each other quietly. The years are quiet, the scenery is beautiful. After making out with Hinata for a while, Natsuki did not forget the purpose of his coming here this time. Is this gossip empty palm? Hinata saw the scroll before, and after taking a look at it, Natsuki spoke. The long-range attack physical technique can just make up for Hinata's current shortcomings. This physical technique, these days must let Hinata learn. In this way, the next exam, your confidence is even greater. Hearing Natsuki's words, Hinata's face had a serious expression. I listened to Natsuki-kun. Reaching out and rubbing Hinata's little head, Natsuki spoke. Then let's get started. Standing up, Hinata's face had a determined color. Yes. There was not much nonsense, and soon the two began to practice against each other. Of course, it's more that Natsuki is feeding Hinata to help her improve her strength. In the process, the jutsu method, Byakugan, and other physical techniques of the Hyuga clan are already clear in Natsuki's heart. The reason why he was able to teach Hinata quickly was entirely because he himself had already thoroughly eaten the physical skills of the Hyuga clan. Not only that, Hinata will do, Natsuki will too, Hinata will not, and Natsuki has figured it out himself. For example, Byakugan Huitian. It's a pity that Hinata's current strength can't master Byakugan Huitian for the time being, otherwise, Natsuki will teach Hinata without hesitation. After learning this trick, Hinata's survivability will be more guaranteed. Time passed little by little, and this day passed slowly in training. Episode 44. Time passed, and 3 days passed. Training ground number 3. Natsuki stood to the side and looked at Hinata standing in front of a wooden stake with a serious face. At this moment, under Hinata's feet, a gossip array faintly emerged, and a chakra surged in waves. When the spirit chi spirit machine reached its peak, Hinata's figure suddenly moved. Gossip empty palm. With a sigh, Hinata slammed out a palm, and a chakra shockwave attacked the stake. Syllable. I only heard a snap, and the shockwave of Hinata's palm, although successful, was very touching, as if a light slap was thrown on the stake. When Xiaomu saw this, he couldn't help but show a smile on his face. Although Hinata's talent is already good, it is still a little reluctant to master this physical technique in 3 days. After all, she does not have the aura of the protagonist. Hinata, hard work. Coming to Hinata's side, Natsuki spoke. It's already good. Next, you only need to increase the power, and the time is still a little short. Hearing Natsuki's words, Hinata's face had a hint of frustration. Natsuki-kun. Reaching out and gently hugging Hinata into his arms, Natsuki spoke. Yo West. No problem, in the final, you can definitely practice this trick, and you can definitely achieve unexpected results when the time comes. Hearing Natsuki's words, Hinata's face was puzzled. Final? Do I still have time? Taking Hinata's little hand and coming to sit down in the shade of a tree on the side, Natsuki said with a smile. Of course there is still time. Tomorrow we will go to the center tower, but there is not the 3rd exam, but the preliminary battle for the final, and after passing the preliminary battle, there is a month to prepare. Hearing Natsuki's words, Hinata's eyes lit up. I know. As for the truth of this news, Hinata will not doubt it. For Natsuki, she has 100% trust. The next day, at 11 o'clock in the morning, at the entrance to the Forest of Death, when Natsuki and Hinata arrived together, the other 2 members of the 8th class, Shino the oil girl and Ya Inuzuka, had been waiting here for a long time. Friend, Hinata, you two are coming so slowly. Seeing the two, Inuzuka's face, with a speechless color, spoke. Shino the oil girl greeted faintly. Good morning, friend, Hinata. Natsuki also said hello, glanced at Naka Shinobu, who was preparing to teleport here, and spoke. Let's go. Teacher Hong's words should go over with the other instructors. Let's go to the examination room first. Hearing Natsuki's arrangement, Shino the oil girl and Inuzuka had no opinion. The 4 of them walked into the reverse psychic spells prepared by several Naka Shinobi at the entrance, and then were teleported out of here. Dead Forest Center Tower. Boom. A cloud of smoke exploded, and the figures of the 4 people of Xiaomu appeared here. Let's go. After glancing at the surrounding situation, Natsuki walked towards the front. It didn't take long for the 4 of them to arrive at the qualifying arena, and when Natsuki arrived, there were already many candidates here. Glancing at the candidates present, Natsuki's gaze fell on the 3 of Iilua, who were also in good condition. Kind of interesting. He took the scrolls of my AI Luo's group, but with the strength of the 3, even if he was injured, if he wanted to get the other scrolls, there was no problem at all. Except for Natsuki and Orochimaru, there was really no other group that could block the 3 of my AI Luo. Even if it is the 7th class, it is still worse. Being watched by Natsuki's gaze, the three of them froze and looked at Natsuki vigilantly. Temari and Kankuro had a trace of fear on their faces, and their eyes did not dare to look at Natsuki, while Iai Luo's performance was slightly better, but the depths of their eyes were full of solemnity. Xiaomu's strength, the three of them, have a deep understanding. After glancing at it, Natsuki withdrew his gaze and looked at the entrance of this venue. About 10 minutes before the second exam ended, the figures of the 7th and 10th classes followed Kakashi and Asuma into the examination room one after another. The figure of Sunset Red also appeared, and Matt Kai with the 3 people of the 3rd shift also came over. Since then, Konoha's Xiaoqiang class has all arrived. Although everyone came, there was no communication, and everyone knew that this exam was not officially over. A spell was planted. Natsuki's gaze fell on Uchiha Sasuke's body, and he secretly said in his heart, Inter's reincarnated son has begun to embark on the path of destiny. Even if there is no communication, Natsuki can still feel. At this moment, Uchiha Sasuke has begun to change somewhat. Obviously, in the second exam, Sasuke Uchiha, who had been ravaged many times and trampled on his dignity as a genius again and again, had begun to give birth to a sincere thirst for power at this moment. After a glance, Natsuki withdrew his gaze and stopped paying attention to Sasuke Uchiha. For Uchiha Sasuke, Natsuki's feelings are actually not very deep. After all, he can't have a fateful bond with Uchiha Sasuke like Naruto Uzumaki, and empathy that can understand each other. So in his heart, there are only 2 words for Sasuke Uchiha's evaluation: wretched, can be saved. The only one who can save Uchiha Sasuke is Naruto Uzumaki, a guy with a super strong mouth. Although Natsuki himself now has a Jura chakra, it stands to reason that his infectivity to others is no worse than Naruto Uzumaki. But Natsuki is a multi-minded after all, not like a tendon like Naruto Uzumaki. Naturally, it can't exert the infectious power of a Jura chakra that can connect the entire ninja world. All in all, everything is the choice of the Stone Gate of Destiny. Here it is. Without waiting long, Natsuki's gaze looked at the entrance of the venue on one side. Naruto-sama. Hearing Natsuki's voice, all the eyes present were looking at the entrance. Led by the 3 generations of Hokage, followed by the examiner and the group present to guide the shinobi, they all came in one after another. That's 22 in total. Originally, it was 21 people, but now a Natsuki has been added, naturally 22. When everyone stood in line according to the class, most people's eyes fell on Natsuki, who was alone. The team is all 3 people, and only Natsuki is alone, which is naturally eye-catching. Natsuki turned a blind eye to these gazes, and his gaze crossed everyone. It fell to Otomi Murakami Shinobu. In his gaze, Natsuki deliberately carried a hint of scrutiny. Episode 45. Boom. Sensing Natsuki's eyes, a smile appeared on Orochimaru's face. Suspected? It's kind of interesting. Friend Kuan. No one suspected his disguise, but he seemed to have discovered some by Natsuki, which had to make Orochimaru even more curious about Natsuki. Deliberately glanced at Natsuki, and Orochimaru smiled without any movement. Natsuki also withdrew his gaze, his brows furrowed, and he didn't say anything more. Standing there like this, Natsuki didn't really find out the identity of the big snake pill. The process goes on. The 3 generations of Hokage explained to the candidates the meaning of the joint Chunin exam. Then Moonlight Wind appeared as the examiner of the 3rd session, explaining the qualifiers that would be held next, so that all the candidates were dissatisfied, and everyone whispered, and Natsuki didn't care. What he cares about is whether his appearance will disrupt some of the order of this exam. If it was a disruption, who would his opponent be? If you can, Natsuki hopes it will be Hinata Ninja. The reason is simple. Hinata. With Hinata's strength now, she may be a few points behind Hinata Ninja, but it is not too far. It's just that because of Hinata Ninja's identity, Hinata is likely not able to fully exert his combat power like he does in the face of other enemies. Hinata, no matter who she faces on the court, even if it is Ai Luo, Natsuki is not too worried in her heart, because she can play her own style. But only Hinata Ninja had to beware. There was some helplessness. Natsuki sighed. I hope to be able to shuffle the order. Just like the original, after sensing the presence of the Great Snake Pill, the medicine master chose to withdraw from the exam and left the side of the central tower. Soon, the rest of the field will be candidates who will participate in the qualifiers. Standing in front of the group of candidates, Moonlight Wind looked at the list in his hand. Konoha's medicine master has chosen to abstain. Now on the field, there are still 21 people left to continue the exam, so in order to save time, one person will be randomly drawn to directly advance to the 3rd exam. Choosing to take a short turn, this practice, the candidates present, did not object. When the words of the Moonlight Wind fell, everyone's eyes were on the big screen that had been released above. Everyone's name starts flashing nonstop. 5 seconds later, on the big screen, a name froze. When they saw this name, everyone's eyes were stunned for a moment, and then they all looked at Sasuke Uchiha. So, Moonlight Blast, still with a pale sick face, looked at Uchiha Sasuke and said, "The first candidate to advance to the 3rd exam is Sasuke Uchiha." Hearing the words of the Moonlight Wind, a look of dissatisfaction flashed across Sasuke Uchiha's face, frowned, and did not say anything more. Moonlight Blast Wind coughed and continued. "Next, ahem, start drawing lots for one-on-one actual battle. The 2 candidates of the battle stay, and the rest of them, please go to the 2nd floor to watch the battle." Along with his words, the names of everyone else on the screen except for Sasuke Uchiha flashed rapidly. Everyone has some expectations and some nervousness. I'm looking forward to playing myself, but I'm also worried that I'll encounter monster-like opponents. Except for Sasuke Uchiha, the rest of the little powerhouses who were in the same class as Natsuki, including the 3 people of Tsunehide village who had been hung and beaten once, all glanced at Natsuki vaguely. In their hearts, a sentence sounded at the same time: don't run into Natsuki. Even Hinata didn't want to meet Natsuki, because she still wanted Natsuki to see her progress, and naturally, she didn't want to face Natsuki herself. In the midst of everyone's apprehension, the 2 names on the screen were directly frozen. Natsuki friends versus red copper armor. Phew. Seeing such a battle combination, several Xiaoqiang let out a long breath, and the whole person relaxed. Inuzuka even spoke. Great, don't worry about facing this guy yourself. Hearing this, those who knew Xiaomu's strength all nodded in approval. I really don't want to face Natsuki. Bronze armor? Looking at the name of his opponent, Natsuki felt some disappointment in his heart. It's not Hinata Ninji, but it is already finalized and cannot be changed. Natsuki's gaze turned to the red copper armor that was already standing in front of him, and looked the red copper armor up and down. His eyes were flat, and he did not put the other party in his eyes. Everyone left the field, leaving the 2 sides of the battle, as well as Moonlight Blast, who was the referee. Both sides. Moonlight Swift glanced at the red copper armor and Natsuki, and spoke. Start fighting. The moment the words of the red copper armor fell, it was directly sealed, and chakra condensed on his right hand. Raised his eyes and looked at Natsuki. Humph. Give me death. Swish. As soon as the figure moved, the red copper armor rushed directly towards Xiaomu. Looking at the copper armor rushing towards him flatly, Natsuki spoke. One move. The rapidly approaching red copper armor, hearing Xiaomu's words, couldn't help but have some doubts. What do you mean? At the moment of his doubts, sting. A flash of thunder, Xiaomu's figure was comparable to teleportation, and he appeared directly in front of the red copper armor, and his eyes looked at the red copper armor. It means. Natsuki jerked his foot up and kicked out just like that. Boom. Swoosh boom. Like a cannonball, the body of the red copper armor smashed into the wall on the side. Slowly putting down his raised feet, Natsuki said calmly, one move to solve you. Natsuki's gaze glanced at the Moonlight Wind, who was still in a state of confusion at the moment, and spoke. Examiner, I won. Recalled by Natsuki's voice, Moonlight Swift glanced at the copper armor that was still on the wall at the moment, and could not be cut off, and announced with a serious face. The battle is over, winner Natsuki friend. After hearing this judgment, Natsuki turned around and walked towards the second floor. The wind is light, to put it mildly. Looking at his figure, different faces showed different colors. People who are familiar with Xiaomu's strength are expected to look. Standing on the second floor, Kakashi leaned against the wall. No matter how many times I watch my friend Kuin's thunder instantaneous technique, I feel experienced. The feeling of short distance is like time and space ninjutsu. What a genius. The other Konoha shinobu all nodded in approval. The moment Xiaomu used the thunder instantation technique just now, they could only capture an afterimage, which showed how fast it was. While everyone was discussing, Xiaomu's figure had already arrived on the second floor. Coming directly to Hinata's side, Natsuki smiled gently. Hinata, I won. Episode 46. Hearing Natsuki's words, Hinata's little face turned red with an excited look. Natsuki-kun, that's great. Looking at Natsuki with bright eyes, Hinata, who didn't care much about his victory or defeat, was quite concerned about whether Natsuki could clear the level. Reaching out and scraping Hinata's little chung's nose, Natsuki's face had a serious smile. I will definitely not disappoint Hinata. A sweet smile appeared on his face, and Hinata, who was even sweeter in his heart, gently bowed his head. I believe, Natsuki-kun. I won't be disappointed with Natsuki-kun either, never. With a gentle smile, Natsuki pulled Hinata to continue talking. Hinata also answered Natsuki. The topic between the two, back and forth, is so much content, but never tired. As if it was Natsuki's promise, Hinata had listened to it for 6 years, but every time he heard it, it was the same as 6 years ago. Sweet in the depths of my heart. The two chatted about T-Honor, the complete world of two, and the sweet atmosphere that constantly exuded, so that the entire venue was in a kind of pink light. Such a scene, to be honest, even a lone wolf like Kakashi has some unbearable. The 3 generations of Hokage on the other side took a puff of cigarette with speechlessness on their faces. Friend, this little guy really likes Hinata. It's just that this kind of liking falls into the eyes of the 3 generations of Hokage, which is precisely the basis for him to be most assured by Natsuki. The young generation with such pure feelings is definitely the most determined force in Konoha in the future. Natsuki has the capital of Hokage. This is what the 3 generations of Hokage firmly believe in their hearts. Although the chat between Natsuki and Hinata made everyone a little strange, this is also because their attention is on the little two of them, and they are looking for dog food. In fact, Natsuki and Hinata, who were very measured, did not disturb the continuation of the exam. In the second group, Shino the Oil Woman vs Sark, and the Oil Woman Shino wins. The third group, Kenmi Sumi vs Kankuro, Kankuro wins. The fourth group, until the 7th group, the order of the battle was no different from what Natsuki remembered. After chatting for a while, Natsuki and Hinata began to pay attention to the entire exam. By the 7th group, when Naruto Uzumaki faced Inazukaya, Natsuki's expression was slightly dignified. It seems that the order of the battle has not changed. In this way, Hinata is going to face Hinata Ninja. Thinking of the memory, in this battle, Hinata's tragic situation, Natsuki's face, inevitably a little cold, with a little cold light in his eyes. This state is not obvious, no one noticed. Except for Hinata, who was holding Natsuki at the moment, no one noticed that Natsuki's little was wrong. Soon, the battle of the 7th group came to an end. Naruto Uzumaki won unexpectedly. Group 8. Natsuki glanced at the big screen, and looked at Hinata, who had gone to comfort his teammate in Izukaya at the moment, with some worry in his eyes. I hope nothing happens. On the field, Moonlight glanced at everyone and spoke. Then next, fight the 8th group. When the words fell, the big screen behind him began to scroll. After a few seconds, the name froze. Hinata versus Toph. Seeing these two names, everyone's eyes fell on Hinata and Toph of Otoan Village, the protagonist of the battle, and no one felt that there was anything wrong, except for Natsuki's face showing a trace of stunned and surprised. Huh? Natsuki smiled slightly, looked at the big screen and said, is the opponent Thoth of Otoan Village? This round is Hinata's victory. His words were not too disguised, and people who were relatively close could hear what Natsuki said. Sunset Hong heard Natsuki's words and smiled. Hinata's opponent should not be underestimated. Friend, you are so confident. Will it put too much pressure on Hinata? Xiaomu smiled slightly and shook his head. Not at all. Hong-sensei, no one knows Hinata better than I do. If the opponent is a companion, Hinata may not win, but if the opponent is an opponent of another village, she won't lose. Natsuki, who spoke, looked at Hinata without deflecting in the slightest. He put all his heart and soul on Hinata's body. Much more invested than when I fought myself. Hinata's appearance attracted the attention of many people, firstly because of her white eyes, and secondly, because Hinata is Natsuki's girlfriend, which is naturally quite eye-catching. Whatever the reason, Hinata is bright at the moment. On the field, Moonlight Swift looked at the two who were already in place, and spoke. Then the 8th group fights begin. When Moonlight's hand was lowered, Hinata's figure moved, and he put on a soft fist starting style. Roll your eyes. Please. Hinata, who spoke, did not have a trace of weakness in his eyes and expressions. Aggressive, determination, decisive. The eyes and temperament that all ninjas should have can be completely found out from Hinata's body, which is completely different from the soft, gentle appearance that was next to Natsuki just now. Huh? Those eyes showed killing intent, and he spoke. Am I underestimated? Then I won't play with you, and you right away. As he spoke, Thoth's figure took a step forward. With this step of Toshi, Hinata's chakra flowed instantly. His face was slightly raised, his eyes were directly at Toph, and he also took a step forward. Buzz. A huge array of gossip surrounded Toph. Seeing this, a smile appeared on Natsuki's face, and he spoke. The battle is over. Swish. As if in response to Natsuki's words, Hinata's figure instantly appeared in front of Thoth, and in the shocked eyes of everyone, his hands were like butterflies wearing flowers, and he shot out directly. Gossiper palm. Hinata snorted and struck out with both hands. 4 palms, 32 palms, 64 palms, bang bang bang. A total of 64 palms, all of which hit the 64 acupuncture points of Thoth's body in an instant. Boom. The last palm was struck, and Thoth's body was directly blasted out and smashed to the ground. With a serious expression on his face, Hinata stepped back a certain distance and looked at the fallen Thoth with a guarded look. As a referee, Moonlight Wind was stunned for a moment, and then glanced at Thoth, who was vomiting blood. Moonlight Swift turned his head and looked at Hinata with a serious face and announced, "The battle is over, the winner, Hinata." Hearing the referee's announcement, Hinata let out a long sigh of relief. His face returned to his previous gentle water-like appearance, turned around and ran to the second floor, looking straight at Natsuki. The joy in his eyes was self-evident. Nodding to Hinata on the second floor, Natsuki turned his head to look at Sunset Red beside him. Teacher Hong, I just said Hinata will definitely win. Hearing this, Shiri Hong nodded with a smile. Well, you win. Episode 47. Among the many spectators, most of them naturally looked at Hinata, who had already come to Natsuki's side. As the eldest lady of the Hyuga clan and the girlfriend of a monster, it is normal for Hinata to behave like this. There is only one person who does not think so. Hinata Ninja. He was well aware of Hinata's personality as a child, so there was some disbelief. Gossip 64 palms. Looking at Thoth, who was being carried away, Hinata Ninja's face had a serious look on his face, and he secretly said in his heart, "How is this possible, Miss Hinata? She actually practiced this trick. Is it because of that Natsuki friend?" Between speaking, Hinata Ninja glanced at Natsuki, then withdrew his gaze, and secretly put Natsuki in his heart. On the side, Natsuki, who was chatting with Hinata, did not notice Hinata Ninja's gaze, and even if he did, he would not care too much. As long as he doesn't hurt Hinata, Natsuki won't have any hostility toward Hinata Ninja. In the end, Hyuga Ninja is just a caged bird trapped by the family rules of the Hyuga clan. Is it a poor man, or his future brother-in-law? With this identity alone, Aya and Echi, Natsuki's hostility towards Hinata Ninja is not great, and it can even be said that there is none. After all, the fact that Hinata Ninja hit Hinata hard in his memory did not happen. In this real world, the plot memory in his mind is nothing, and there is no need to keep holding on. The battle of the next group will soon begin. I love Rogue vs. Lee Locke. Seeing this scene, Xiaomu's face brought a hint of interest. This battle can be regarded as the most amazing battle in the entire qualifiers, especially the battle after Xiaoli's 8-door Duanjia opened to the 5th door. That kind of terrifying speed and power, even Xiaomu has to look sideways at it. Xiaoli at the current stage is not only not weak, on the contrary, he is also very strong. It's a pity that as the upper limit of a ninja, it can't go anywhere. At most, that is, the future. Metkei. It can't be said that Metkei is not strong. After all, it is a fact that Deathgate Yakai kicked and almost kicked out of the finale. But in exchange for a moment of Fenghua throughout his life, Xiaomu asked himself if he couldn't do it. Konoha rare beasts are rare beasts, only Metkei, others can't do that level. Xiaomu-juan, do you see Xiaoli very much? Hinata looked at Natsuki and asked softly. Hearing Hinata's question, Natsuki was slightly stunned, and then gently pinched Hinata's little face. It's Hinata. Only she can discover the slightest change at any time, which is really heartwarming. As cute as ever. Xiaomu's gaze fell on Xiaoli in the field, and he spoke. Xiaoli is very strong. After all, he is a pale blue beast that is proud of Konoha, the true legend of Metkei Shangnan, and the prestige of the 8 Gates Dunjia Array. I have learned about it in the books in the school library. Natsuki's voice fell, and his words were heard not far away, and a smiling Metkei spoke. Yo! Friend Kuan, you know very well. As he spoke, Metkei, who was thick eyebrows and big eyes, dressed in a green robe, gave a thumbs up to Natsuki and grinned, and the flash on his teeth blinded everyone's eyes. People who are familiar with Metkei can't help but be speechless. Seeing this look, Natsuki's eyes twitched, retracted his gaze, and looked at the battle that had begun on the field. Very fierce battle. I love Luo's absolute defense. It is definitely not so simple to break through. Don't look at Xiaomu's previous battle. The whole process was to crush the 3 of my AI Luo to fight. This is definitely not because I love Luo, they are weak. But Natsumu is too strong. So I love Luo, 3 people will look so weak. In fact, I love Luo-chan to a batch. Not long after the battle began, Xiaoli's 8-door Duanjia was directly forced to hide. With the permission of Metkei, Xiaoli directly chose to open the door. The combat power that burst out shocked everyone's eyes. With a solemn gaze, Natsuki looked at the battle in the field, and with his eyesight, he was naturally able to keep up with the speed of the battle between the two. It is precisely because it can keep up, so it will be dignified. Xiaoli's body soon became overloaded. I can't stand it anymore. When Xiaoli's last blow fell, Xiaomu said a word, and then turned his eyes to Metkei. At this moment, the muscles on Metkei's body are tense, and it is obvious that he is about to strike at any time. It's just that hesitates. After all, this is the time when Xiaoli carries out his forbearance. Shaking his head, Natsuki sighed and leaned against the wall, not continuing to look. The next situation was similar to what Xiaomu thought. Xiaoli, who had reached the limit, could not withstand the power of the 8-gate Dunjia, and then was seized by my AI Luo to seize his weak opportunity and was hit hard in an instant. Immediately afterwards, Metkei came on and ended the battle. As for the last one, it was none other than the battle between Hinata Ninji and Akimichi Dingji. After a few rounds of fighting, Akimichi Dingji was defeated. This is expected by everyone. At this point, the qualifiers are officially over. Above the arena, then, the qualifiers end here. Moonlight Swift glanced at the list in his hand and spoke. Please, all the candidates who have qualified for the 3rd exam, come to me and draw the opponent of the 3rd test. Hearing the words of the Moonlight Wind, Natsuki looked at Hinata beside him. Let's go, Hinata. Went to the lottery. Hinata bowed her head softly. The two walked together to the arena below, and the other people who had qualified for the competition also walked down. Those who are qualified, there are 10 people in one. Sasuke Uchiha, who qualified by lot, plus Natsuki, Hinata, Shino the Oil Girl, Naruto Uzumaki, Shikamaru Nara, Ninji Hinata, Era, Kankuro, Temari. In total, there are only 2 villages, Konoha Hidden Village and Sand Hidden Village. After the 3 Hokage announced the official exam information, each candidate began to draw lots in turn to confirm who his opponent was. Natsuki was the first to extract and directly opened the serial number in his hand. Am I number 1? Glancing at the number he had drawn, Natsuki was stunned for a moment, and then looked at the others to see who got the number 2, who would be his opponent. Xiaomu got the number 1, and the faces of the others changed slightly, and they quickly opened the number in their hands. No one wants to go to Natsuki, because you can't win at all, you will definitely be crushed in battle. No one wants to experience it. Just when Natsuki was curiously looking at who his opponent was, the corners of his clothes were pulled by someone. Looking at Hinata beside him with a puzzled expression, Natsuki asked, "What's wrong?" Hinata, with a rosy color on his face, Hinata opened the number in his hand and said timidly, "That Natsuki-kun, I'm number 2. Natsuki opened his mouth, a little speechless. What is this? Do you want to let him and Hinata fight the 2 imperial cities? This one, some, can't do it." Hearing that Hinata got the number 2, the rest of the 8 people all breathed a sigh of relief. Good risk. You don't have to face a monster like Natsuki as soon as you play. I just don't know why, everyone actually has some expectations. The battle between this little couple. Presumably, it will be fun. Episode 48. Soon, the battle grouping for the third exam was completed. In the first round, Natsuki Yuto versus Hinata. In the second round, Hinata Ninji versus Naruto Uzumaki. In the third round, Shino the Oil Girl versus Kankuro. Round 4, Temari versus Nara Shikamaru. In the fifth round, Sasuke Uchiha versus Iai Luo. Except for the addition of the couple rivals of Natsuki and Hinata, and the order of the battle between Sasuke Uchiha and Eren to the end, the rest did not surprise Natsuki. The order of battles in memory is exactly the same. After getting the list, the second session of the joint Zongnan exam finally came to an end. The next thing to prepare for is the last one, the third public exam. At the exit of the Death Forest, the little powerhouses who graduated from the same class all left together, including Sasuke Uchiha together. Because he didn't use too much power, Uchiha Sasuke's spell did not consume too much of his energy, and after being sealed by Kakashi, he did not get hospitalized, but he was just slightly uncomfortable. After walking inside the village, Natsuki turned his head and looked at the small powerhouses who were about to act separately. Everyone. Natsuki opened his mouth and looked at everyone. Meet at 6 o'clock at the barbecue queue. According to the previous agreement, we will have a good dinner today. We will all arrive. Hearing Xiaomu's words, the little strong people present all showed a smile on their faces. Oh. It will definitely arrive. While saying hello, everyone waved goodbye and walked towards their homes. You have to go back and change into clean clothes. Of course, Hinata and Natsuki's bodies are still quite clean. Naturally, there is no need to go back to wash or anything. Naturally choose to stroll around the street, regardless of other things. Walking hand in hand on the street, Natsuki and Hinata chatted while shopping. When the two walked in a relatively less populated alley, swish, a breaking wind sounded. Immediately afterwards, Hinata Ninji's figure appeared in front of Natsuki and Hinata, looking at Natsuki with warlike intent. Are you the chief graduate of this class? Looking at Natsuki, Hinata Ninji held his hands and asked knowingly. Looking at Hinata Ninji, Natsuki was stunned for a moment, and then nodded. Is there something going on? Taking a deep look at Natsuki, and then at Hinata behind Natsuki, Hinata Ninji turned around and said, "Friend Natsuki, I'm looking forward to fighting you." Swish. At the same time as the words fell, Hinata Ninji left directly in an instant. Come like the wind, go without a trace. Although the forcing frame is full, this behavior is full of confusion. The monk Natsuki Shoji scratched his head. This brother-in-law, which kind of wind does he smoke? Do you think it's exciting to run in front of him and pretend to be forced to run? Hinata Ninji-kun? Smiling, Natsuki turned his head to look at Hinata and spoke. Hinata, your cousin is so interesting. About the relatives of the Hinata family, Natsuki has known, and it is precisely because of this that Hinata knows that Natsuki knows Hinata Ninji. Hearing Natsuki's words, Hinata's face had a hint of worry, and the little hand held by Natsuki was also tightened. Natsuki-kun. Feeling a trace of uneasiness in Hinata's heart, Natsuki smiled slightly, squeezed the small hand he held, and said, "Don't worry. Tenseigan, I will meet the one in his destiny who changed him, and I will meet him soon. I believe that sooner or later, Tenseigan will become the cousin you remember. So don't worry, I have no malice towards him. I have Shinobu Naruto, but, mouth, Hinata Ninji. I have to mention Naruto Uzumaki's mouth again. It's really strong. Ca, mouth, 1, mouth, 1 quasi. Hinata Ninji's situation, for Naruto Uzumaki, is just a piece of cake, and after a slap in the face, Hinata Ninji will successfully change and will become more reliable. For such a brother-in-law, Xiaomu feels very good. As for being jealous? Inexistent. In Hinata's small world, he was left alone a long time ago, so he would not eat his brother-in-law's flying vinegar. I listened to Natsuki-kun. Hearing her sweetheart's words, Hinata's face showed a sweet smile. Holding Hinata, Natsuki spoke. Let's go. It's almost time, let's go to the barbecue restaurant, set the location first, and wait for everyone's arrival. Hinata followed Natsuki and asked with some doubts, "Don't you need to go and talk to your mother?" With his eyes lit up, Natsuki turned his head to look at Hinata with burning eyes, and spoke. "No, I told my mother when I went out this morning." "But Hinata, this mother-sama you just said is great. You must have been a gift from God." When Hinata heard this, his little face turned red with shame for a moment, and he lowered his head. Natsuki-kun bully. Natsuki smiled heartily and walked towards the front, Hinata following closely. Yakiniku-kyu. Because there are many people, it is natural to have a relatively large compartment. Although the barbecue here is quite expensive, but with Natsuki's earning power, this consumption is just a small meaning. After this Naka Shinobi exam, after the 5th generation of Hokage Tsunade took the throne, it was absolutely impossible to let him continue to operate as a subordinate ninja with such a powerful combat power. To become a middle ninja, it is certain, when he becomes a zonin, he will naturally go back to perform more advanced tasks, and the speed of money will only be faster. In the beginning, there were only 2 people here, Natsuki and Hinata. It didn't take long for a group of Shaoqiang to arrive one after another. The first dinner after graduation began uneventfully, although everyone here has different personalities, but overall, the atmosphere of this dinner is still very good and good. Although boys and girls sit at the same table and chat about things, they are not the same. At this time, Xiaomu naturally will not pull Hinata, Qingqing and me, he and the boys, chatting about things between the boys. The topic soon turned to Natsuki. Then again, he said. Orochimaru was eating the barbecue, his gaze fell on Natsuki's body, and he spoke. After this zonin exam, friend, this guy is definitely going to become a zonin, right? Absolutely. Hearing Orochimaru's words, Natsuki smiled. Well, you should be able to become a zonin, but your chances are also great. Putting down his chopsticks, Natsuki spoke. It seems that none of you are quite clear about what the joint ninja exam tests. Looking at everyone's puzzled looks, Natsuki continued. The zonin exam does not mean that you can become a zonin if you win the battle, but it is examined by the upper ninja and the observation of all aspects of the lower ninja, intelligence collection, on-the-spot response, decisive ability, and combat effectiveness. With a smile, Natsuki spoke. So it's okay to perform well, you don't necessarily have to win the battle. Episode 49. Hearing Natsuki's words, everyone was thoughtful, and they already understood what the real assessment of upgrading to zonin was. The topic of everyone began again, and they all began to talk about the things above the practice. Of course, most of them were asked, and Natsuki made some answers. Even Sasuke Uchiha was not ashamed to ask, let alone others. For this kind of practice experience, of course, Xiaomu will not be stingy and will answer questions. The atmosphere of the whole party is quite good. Natsuki, as the core soul of this small team, is unbreakable. The party lasted until after 8 o'clock in the evening, when it ended. At the door of the barbecue restaurant, after saying hello, everyone went back to each house and looked for their mothers. Of course, in the foreseeable future, starting tomorrow, all those who will take the third exam will start special training. After all, this exam is still quite important. Probably the only one who doesn't pay much attention to is Sasuke Uchiha. He just wants to fight, keep winning, and that's it. The encounter with the Great Snake Pill, the darkness in his heart was gradually awakened. This will be an inevitable metamorphosis for Sasuke Uchiha. Only after the Great Snake Pill tuning teaching, the growth of Sasuke Uchiha is truly limitless, and after many openings and hangings in the future, he will step into the pyramid of the pinnacle of the ninja world and become one of the super strong. Of course, these are all afterwards. After the party ended, Natsuki accompanied Hinata in the direction of the Hyuga clan. The two of them are still talking their own words, they both enjoy this alone time, and they have never been tired of it. The doorway of the Hyuga clan. Natsuki reached out and pinched Hinata's little face, and spoke. Meet tomorrow at the number 3 training ground. I will conduct special training for you. Is it okay? Hearing Natsuki's words, Hinata's face hesitated slightly, and for the first time did not directly agree to Natsuki's request. Natsuki-kun. Hinata raised his head and looked at Natsuki with fixed eyes. This month I want to practice by myself. In order to prove myself to Natsuki-kun. Hearing Hinata's words, Natsuki was stunned for a moment. This is the first time Hinata has said that he wants to practice by himself. To be honest, Natsuki really didn't expect Hinata to refuse his request. But this refusal, he is really happy to see. Hinata is not an appendage of Natsuki after all, she is a living person. For Natsuki, she is one of the 2 beloved people in this world, and she is definitely not in existence like a puppet. It was precisely because of this that at this moment, when Natsuki heard Hinata's words to practice by himself, instead of feeling uncomfortable in his heart, he was very happy and relieved, because this decision represents Hinata's own will. Natsuki looked at Hinata with his head bowed in front of him and said with a smile, very happy. I was so happy to hear Hinata say this. Raising his head, Hinata looked at Natsuki with a puzzled look on his face. Natsuki looked at Hinata with gentle eyes and spoke. Hinata, who has always been obedient, is cute, and Hinata, who has her own attention, is also cute. Hinata, you don't need to prove anything to me, because in my heart, you are the unique Hinata. This kind of love words are still a little big for Hinata's lethality. Hearing Natsuki's words, Hinata kept playing with the corners of her clothes, blushing and lowering her head, and on her head, she began to smoke. Natsuki-kun, so cunning, always saying such shy things. Smiled, reaching out and hugging Hinata into his arms, Natsuki whispered softly in Hinata's ear. Faced with such a cute girlfriend, a small request, I can't find any reason to refuse. After speaking, Natsuki let go of Hinata, his eyes expectant. So I'm looking forward to Hinata's practice results in a month. Touching Hinata's earlobe, Natsuki said loudly. Then, good night Hinata. When the words fell, Xiaomu turned around and walked in the direction of his house, with a relaxed face. Hinata has already made an enlightenment. As a boyfriend, are there any other options? Without watching Natsuki's figure disappear, Hinata had a beautiful smile on her face. Good night, Natsuki-kun. After Natsuki's figure disappeared completely, Hinata turned around and walked into the house. Hinata came to the living room, and as soon as she entered, she saw her father waiting for her. Are you back? Hinata saw Hinata come in and said lightly. I received the news that you passed the qualifiers, well done. Sitting in front of Hinata's face had a hint of seriousness. Father, this month, please train me well. Smiling slightly, then returning to a serious expression, Hinata nodded and said, be enlightened. With a serious face, Hinata nodded, yes. The next day, early in the morning, Natsuki's house. Hinata had to practice at home, and Natsuki didn't have anything to do for a while. After all, with his strength, if he practiced alone for a month, he wouldn't improve much, and it was even better to stay with those shungren for a while and occasionally pick up a few cards. Natsuki was now able to pick up 1 or 2 purple cards every day, and he didn't have to sweat every day to pick up those seinen cards. So this month, Natsuki plans to use it to accompany his mother well. Since he went to school, until now, he rarely had time to spend with his mother, and it was rare to have a month's vacation, and of course Natsuki wanted to spend more time with his mother. "Friend, haven't you been okay?" Natsuki, who was changing into a casual set of clothes in the room, heard his mother's voice coming from downstairs. Putting his clothes on his body casually, Natsuki replied, "Get down now." For Natsuki, a rare month-long vacation, today his mother seized the opportunity to go to the street to buy some things, and at the same time buy him a little new clothes. Perhaps because of the Vortex Immortal Body and Azura Chakra, as well as the physical skill card, Natsuki's height is very fast. Although he is only 12 years old, Natsuki's height is already 1 meter 6. This height is already the kind of top among his peers. Therefore, Xiaomu's clothes are also updated quickly, and the previous clothes are now slightly smaller when worn. Natsuki went downstairs and saw his mother waiting for him. "Let's go." The mother smiled slightly, and after saying that, she walked towards the door. Natsuki closed the door and followed. All morning, they accompanied their mother to buy things, and it was not until noon that the mother and son finished shopping. Walking home, when the two passed by the Konoha bathhouse. From a distance, Natsuki saw the door of a ball shop, where Naruto Uzumaki and an old man with white hair were arguing. Can't help but stop. Natsuki looked at this scene with interest. "Friend, if you have something to do, go get busy." Sensing Natsuki's strangeness, her mother had a smile on her face. "Mom, I can go back alone." Hearing this, Natsuki nodded and said, "Then I'll take a look." As he spoke, Natsuki walked directly towards the two in front of the bathhouse. If nothing else, that white-haired old man, no one else, was an extremely attractive existence. One of the 3 shinobi, Jiraiya. Episode 50. Jiraiya. This man, even after 12 years, Natsuki still remembers it deeply. After all, he writes well. Ahem, just kidding. After all, he is a man with unique charm. Xiaomu walked towards the two, and soon entered within 100 meters, and before he could say hello, the voice of the system sounded in Xiaomu's mind. "Shoo. Purple cards are detected falling within 100 meters, are they picked up?" The sound of the system sounded, which made Natsuki slightly stunned. "Pick. Successfully picked, obtained purple chakra card, has been stored." A chakra card? Natsuki was slightly disappointed, but he didn't care too much. The drop of cards is regular, chakra cards are the easiest to drop, and ninjutsu cards are slightly more difficult. But fortunately, many of Jiraiya's powerful ninjutsu are closely related to Miyamu Mountain, and it is indeed quite powerful to use together. But when it falls into Natsuki's hands, it may not be able to exert it. After all, he had never signed a psychic contract with Miyamu Mountain, and he did not intend to sign a psychic contract with Miyamu Mountain. Naruto. There was still some distance, and Natsuki opened his mouth to say hello. "What are you doing here?" Although he was greeting Naruto Uzumaki, Natsuki's gaze was looking straight at Jiraiya, looking each other up and down. Seeing Natsuki appear, Naruto Uzumaki was stunned for a moment and greeted, "Friend, why are you here?" Swish. Moving in an instant, Natsuki came directly to Naruto Uzumaki and Jiraiya, and spoke. "I accompanied my mother out to go shopping and saw you here, so I came over to say hello. This is?" His gaze looked at Jiraiya. At close range, Xiaomu could feel the powerful aura exuding from the other party. Shadow level. Although he fought with the big snake pill before, he also felt the powerful shadow level aura on his body, but at that time, he was in a state of battle, and Natsuki did not care too much. At this moment, on Zilei's body, he really felt how powerful the shadow level aura was. And Zilei is still in the shadow level, a very strong handful. At the same time that Natsuki looked at Zilei, Zilei was also looking at Xiaomu, with curiosity in his eyes. At this moment, Naruto Uzumaki began to introduce. "Friend, let me introduce you. This is the teacher I just found to guide my practice, called Fairy." After introducing Jiraiya, Naruto Uzumaki turned his head and introduced Natsuki to Jiraiya with an unhappy look. "Hey. Lustful immortal, this is my best friend and opponent, Natsuki. Friend, is a super genius." Boom. Hearing Naruto Uzumaki's words, Jiraiya directly punched him in the head and spoke. "Introduce me well." After the fight, Jiraiya's gaze looked at Natsuki with a smile on his face. Is this child the next generation of Hokage candidates who are notified by the 3rd generation of telegrams? Already strong. Seeing that Jiraiya looked at himself, Natsuki smiled slightly and spoke. "Unexpectedly, I actually met 2 big people in a row within a week, although the first person I met was not lucky at all." Hearing Natsuki's words, Jiraiya had a smile on his face. Looks like you know who I am. Little ghost, you are very good. Do you want to go to practice with me? I will have a lot of good ninjutsu, want to see it?" Glancing at Naruto Uzumaki, Natsuki spoke. "Thank you for the invitation, but I rarely have a month off, and I want to spend time with my mother. Practice or something, forget it." Hearing this, Zilei also smiled and said, "Got it. That's a real pity." Waving his hand, Natsuki turned to leave with a smile on his face. Then, "I won't bother the two. After saying that, Natsuki turned around and left here. He came over just to see if he could pick up a high-quality card here. A purple card is enough. Next is Naruto Uzumaki's chance, and Natsuki naturally won't bother his friend to become stronger. Friend, this guy is still as leisurely as ever. Naruto Uzumaki looked at Natsuki with some envy and spoke. Jiraiya on the side glanced at Naruto Uzumaki's envious look. A kind smile appeared on his face, and raised his gaze to fall on Natsuki's body, full of appreciative color. Genius, there are few who don't like it. Time passed quickly, and half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Konoha number 3 has 2 training sessions. Yikes. Natsuki was wearing a training uniform and was standing on a small river, constantly waving the grass pheasant sword in his hand. One trick at a time, meticulous. Other physical skills, ninjutsu or ninjutsu, you can pick up cards to become stronger. Only his Xiaomu sword art needs to be practiced slowly by himself, and Xiaomu, who has not practiced sword art since Dasheng, is too idle at home for a month. So he was asked by his mother to prepare for the 3rd exam, so he simply practiced his own sword art. In the future of the 4th Ninja World War, Natsuki still wants to dance with Uchiha Madara. In the past 6 years, the accumulation of physical skills, coupled with the fact that the realm of strength is different now, Xiaomu's knife skills have improved rapidly. The distance is complete, just a foot away from the door. Phew. After training for a short half-day, Xiaomu put the knife back into its sheath and let out a long breath. Let's get here today. After holding the clear river water and washing his face, Natsuki sat down in the shade of the tree. After taking a sip of water, Natsuki's eyes had an expectant look in it, and he secretly said in his heart, "System, check my current attributes." Shoo. Host Properties Panel. Name, Natsuki Yurin. Chakra, 1857. Ninjutsu, 633. Physical Skills, 651. Illusion, 589. Blood Succession Limit. White Eye, Evolutionary, Vortex Immortal Body. Comprehensive Strength Assessment. Elite Upper Patience. The data has risen by a long list again, but the assessment of comprehensive strength is still at the elite level of ninja. But this is only a system mechanical, and it is hard to judge according to the data. If you really want to say, Natsuki's combat effectiveness is definitely not just the evaluation of the elite shinobi. Stronger than the elite shinobi, weaker than the combat power between shadow levels. That is, a level summarized by netizens in his previous life. Quasi-shadow. It's just a pity that the system doesn't have the evaluation of the quasi-shadow level. So naturally, Natsuki's evaluation is either to break through to the shadow level, or it is still the current elite shinobi. The rise of chakra will affect the balance of the 3-dimensional attribute area of the ninja illusion. Glancing at the 3-dimensional attributes that he gradually began to balance, Natsuki said thoughtfully, "The shadow level is really difficult to improve." Leaning against the tree trunk, Natsuki glanced up at the sky. If you want to break through the shadow level, you can only hope for the next Konoha collapse plan.